Something is wrong with the woods behind my house. I've known it for years, ever since I moved in. The trees stand too still on windless nights. The shadows stretch in directions that defy the sun's position. The animals fall silent in unison, as if responding to a signal human ears cannot detect. But what happened 3 nights ago, what I finally saw with my own eyes, has confirmed my worst fears. I'm still shaking as I tell you this. The scratch marks on my back throb with a strange heat that no amount of antibiotic ointment seems to soothe. They pulse in sync with one another, like they're connected by some unseen circulatory system. The doctors tell me they've never seen wounds quite like these. The pattern is unnatural, almost geometric, as if whatever made them wasn't operating with a human understanding of anatomy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daniel Mercer. For most of my life, I've been obsessed with the unexplained, those creatures that exist in the shadows of human knowledge. Cryptids, we call them, beasts that shouldn't exist but somehow do, defying scientific categorization. Sasquatch, the Jersey Devil, the Mothman. I've spent years tracking reports, interviewing witnesses, and occasionally, very occasionally, catching glimpses of things that shouldn't be. I used to run a popular cryptid blog and podcast before my own encounter changed everything. You might remember the Allegheny Howler incident of 2018. I was there, one of the 3 researchers who spent 6 weeks in the mountains following reports of a creature that made sounds no other animal could produce. We captured audio, strange, multi-layered vocalizations that experts still can't identify, like several different throats producing sounds simultaneously, oscillating between frequencies that shouldn't naturally occur. The audio analysis revealed subsonic elements that made our recording equipment malfunction and caused several listeners to experience intense nausea and inexplicable anxiety. I was the one who spotted the creature moving through the trees at dusk. Just a silhouette, but unmistakably bipedal, impossibly tall and thin, with a gait that seemed both fluid and jerky, as if some frames of its movement were missing. When I played the audio recording of its call, it stopped, turned toward me, though I never saw its face, and made a sound I still hear in my nightmares, a sound that seemed to exist both inside and outside my head simultaneously, like someone whispering directly into my brain while screaming from a mile away. After that, my fascination with cryptids became an obsession. I bought my current house specifically because it borders an expansive tract of old-growth forest with a history of strange sightings dating back to colonial times. Local indigenous legends speak of thin people who dwelled in the oldest parts of the forest. Colonial records mention walkers between trees that would appear on the boundaries of settlements during harsh winters. The previous owner sold it well below market value. Bad energy, he said, refusing to elaborate. His hands trembled as he handed me the keys. I noticed he never once looked toward the tree line as we completed the transaction. I should have asked more questions. For 2 years, I monitored the woods, set up trail cameras, recorded audio, kept detailed logs of unusual occurrences. The phenomena started small, batteries draining inexplicably fast, equipment shutting off at the same time each night, 3:27 a.m. precisely. Occasionally, I'd find my cameras damaged, lenses mysteriously cracked or turned to face the ground. The most disturbing were the audio recordings containing strange gaps or unintelligible whispers beneath the usual forest sounds. When isolated and amplified, these whispers contained patterns that linguists I consulted said resembled speech, but no known language. One expert in computational linguistics noted that the patterns were too regular, too structured to be random noise, but contained phonemic combinations that human vocal tracts shouldn't be able to produce simultaneously. I documented tracks that started abruptly in the middle of the clearings and ended just as suddenly, perfectly circular areas where nothing would grow. Birds that would fly around certain sections of the forest rather than over them. Local wildlife behaving erratically. Deer standing motionless for hours, staring at nothing, or packs of coyotes moving in perfect synchronization, like a single organism with multiple bodies. But I never saw anything concrete. Nothing I could publish. Nothing I could prove. Nothing that would satisfy the growing audience of skeptics who followed my research with increasing derision. Until 3 nights ago. It was unusually warm for October, the kind of night where the air feels too thick to breathe properly, heavy with moisture and the sweet rot smell of fallen leaves. The temperature had hovered around 75 degrees all day, about 20 degrees above normal for this region. The meteorologists on local news stations seemed baffled by the heat dome that had settled over our county alone. A gibbous moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across my backyard, shadows that seemed to waver and shift even when the trees casting them remained perfectly still. I'd been drinking, I'll admit that now, just a couple of beers, enough to take the edge off after a frustrating day of reviewing empty camera footage. Though in retrospect, the footage wasn't entirely empty. There were moments, single frames, where the pixels distorted in patterns that formed vague silhouettes, always at the periphery, but I'd convinced myself it was digital artifacts, compression errors, nothing more. At about 11:30 p.m., I decided to check my equipment one last time before bed. I often do this using the infrared viewfinder on my FLIR thermal camera to scan the tree line from my back porch. Usually I'll catch raccoons, the occasional deer, sometimes a fox. Nothing extraordinary. But that night, something caught my attention. A heat signature unlike anything I'd seen before. Taller than a human, but with a strange, disjointed thermal pattern, as if its body temperature varied wildly across its form. Some sections registered as cold as the ambient air, while others burned bright orange-white on the display, hotter than any mammals should be. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, seeming to glide between the trees rather than walk. Most disturbing was how it appeared to fragment and reconnect as it moved. Pieces of its thermal signature separating and rejoining like mercury. I should have gone inside, locked the doors, called someone. Instead, I did what any true cryptid hunter would do. I grabbed my best camera, a high-powered flashlight, and my digital recorder, and headed into the woods. The temperature dropped noticeably as I passed beyond the edge of my yard. From the unseasonable warmth to a bone-deep chill in the space of a single step, the chattering insects fell silent. Even the ambient noise of distant traffic seemed to vanish, as if I'd stepped through a barrier into somewhere else, somewhere older. The only sound was my own breathing and the soft crunch of leaves beneath my feet. The air felt different, too. Bigger, resistant, as if I were walking through invisible cobwebs. Each breath tasted metallic, with an undertone of petrichor and something else, something like ozone mixed with decomposition. My phone's flashlight app flickered and died. The dedicated flashlight I'd brought dimmed to a fraction of its normal brightness. I thought I'd just replaced the batteries that morning. I followed the path I'd worn over the years, moving deep into the woods, scanning with both my thermal camera and my flashlight. The heat signature had vanished, but something drew me forward, a compulsion I couldn't explain then and still can't rationalize now, like a fishhook in my consciousness, tugging me deeper into the darkness. About a quarter-mile in, I reached the small clearing where I'd set up my primary research station, a weatherproof box containing a motion-activated camera system and an audio recorder. As I approached, I noticed the lock had been broken, not cut, but broken, as if crushed by immense pressure. The metal was deformed in a way that suggested it had been subjected to heat as well as force. The edges melted and twisted. The equipment inside was undamaged but had been rearranged. The camera now pointed at the ground. The audio recorder was still running, but when I checked the display, I saw it had been recording for 72 hours straight, far longer than its battery should have lasted. The timestamp indicated it had started recording at exactly 3:17 a.m., 3 days prior, though I hadn't been anywhere near it at the time. That's when I noticed the silence. Complete, absolute silence. No wind in the leaves, no distant owls, not even the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears, though I could feel it pounding against my ribs. It was as if sound itself had been extracted from the environment, leaving a vacuum that pressed against my eardrums. And then a sound behind me, not a footstep, not a growl, something more akin to paper tearing, a wet, ripping noise that made the hair on my arms stand on end. It was followed by a subtle displacement of air, like the pressure change before a storm, but concentrated, directional, emanating from directly behind me. I turned, raising my flashlight. What I saw defies description, but I'll try. I must try, though words feel woefully inadequate, like trying to describe color to someone who has never seen. It stood at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by a large oak tree. At first glance, it resembled a man, tall, perhaps 7 feet, but unnaturally thin. Its proportions were wrong, limbs too long, joints bending in impossible directions. But it was the details that turned my blood to ice. Its skin, if you could call it that, seemed to ripple and shift like the surface of water disturbed by a stone, dark, with a texture reminiscent of tree bark, but moving, always moving, patterns flowing across its surface like oil on water. The patterns occasionally resolved into what looked like faces, human faces, expressions of pain or ecstasy, frozen for milliseconds before dissolving back into the swirling chaos. Where its face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless expanse, like polished obsidian. No eyes, no mouth, no recognizable features at all. But somehow, I knew it was looking at me. I could feel its attention like a physical weight, a pressure on my skin, as if the very air between us had become dense with its focus. Most disturbing were the appendages that occasionally emerged from its form. Not arms or legs, but something more like tentacles or branches, extruding and retracting as if the creature couldn't decide on a single shape. They seemed to reach toward me, though the entity itself remained motionless. These appendages left trails in the air, visible distortions like heat waves that lingered for seconds after they moved. I stood frozen, unable to run, unable to even scream. My camera hung forgotten at my side. My flashlight beam trembled across its form. Then it moved. Not toward me as I had feared, but upward it unfolded, stretching impossibly tall, limbs elongating like dark ribbons against the night sky. In seconds, it towered over the clearing, easily 15 feet high now. Its form became more abstract, less humanoid. The appendages multiplied, reaching in all directions, some extending toward the canopy above, others toward the surrounding trees, and several, too many to count, toward me. That's when I heard it, not with my ears, but inside my head, a voice that wasn't a voice, more like the concept of communication forced directly into my consciousness. Not words exactly, but meaning transmitted with perfect clarity, accompanied by images and sensations that my brain struggled to translate to something comprehensible. You have been watching us. Not a question, a statement, clinical. Curious, the voice had a texture to it. Rough, ancient, multi-layered, as if several entities were speaking in perfect unison. It carried with it impressions of vast timescales, of patient observation spanning centuries. Before I could respond, could even think of how to respond, it moved again, faster than my eyes could track. One moment it stood at the edge of the clearing, the next it was directly in front of me, its featureless face inches from mine. I felt something cold and rough brush against my cheek. One of those appendages, textured like wet wood but pulsing with its own internal rhythm. Now we watch you. The appendage traced from my cheek down to my chest, coming to rest directly over my heart. I felt a pressure, not painful but insistent, as if it were feeling the rhythm of my heartbeat. No, more than that, as if it were somehow tasting it, sampling my fear like a connoisseur might sample wine. More images flooded my mind. My house, seen from different angles, different times of day. Myself sleeping, working at my computer, eating dinner, all from perspectives that would be impossible for any normal observer. Through windows that don't exist, from corners of rooms too small to accommodate anything larger than a spider. They had been watching me for how long? Since I moved in? Before? The world tilted. My vision tunneled. I remember falling, my knees just giving out. The creature's form seemed to fracture, pieces of it separating while still maintaining connection through invisible tethers. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the creature's form seeming to splinter and divide, becoming multiple silhouettes against the night sky, all oriented toward me. all watching. More images washed over me as my consciousness faded. Rapid flashes of other encounters, other witnesses throughout time. Colonial settlers frozen in terror at the edge of clearings. Indigenous hunters making offerings at twisted trees. Modern hikers found catatonic on forest trails, unable to explain what they had seen. All connected, all part of something vast and patient and utterly alien to human comprehension. I woke at dawn, curled at the base of a tree nearly a mile from the clearing. My camera and flashlight were gone. My clothes were damp with dew and torn in several places, and my back burned with pain. When I managed to get home and examine it in the mirror, I found the marks. 5 parallel lines, perfectly spaced, too precise to be animal claws, too deep to be scratches from branches. They formed a pattern, a symbol perhaps, or words in some unimaginable language. Under magnification, each scratch contained smaller, intricate patterns within it, like fractal geometries that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. When photographed, they appeared blurred regardless of the camera settings. The following nights, I've stayed inside, doors locked, blinds drawn. But it doesn't matter. I know they're out there. I feel them watching. My sleep is fragmented, interrupted by moments of complete wakefulness at precisely 3:17 a.m. each night. The exact moment of the static on my digital alarm clock resolves briefly into what looks like a thin, elongated silhouette. Sometimes I catch glimpses of movement at the edge of the woods, tall, thin shapes that vanish when I try to focus on them, shadows that stand independent of the objects that should be casting them, reflections in windows that don't match the room behind me. My trail cameras show nothing but static. My phone drops calls whenever I try to describe what happened. Email drafts fail to send. Text messages transform into strings of random characters. It's as if the experience itself is being quarantined, prevented from spreading like information contagion. 2 days ago, I tried to leave, packed a bag, got in my car, made it almost 5 miles before the engine died without warning. When I tried to call for help, my phone showed no signal. I waited by the roadside for nearly 3 hours, but not a single car passed. The road, usually busy with commuter traffic, was deserted. Eventually, I walked back home. The car was in my driveway the next morning, keys in the ignition. The engine started on the first try. Last night, I woke at exactly 3:17 again to find my back door standing open. I know I locked it, triple-checked in fact. On my kitchen table sat my missing camera and flashlight arranged neatly side by side. When I checked the memory card, it was empty, completely wiped clean. But scratched into the kitchen table's surface, just behind the items, was the same pattern as the marks on my back. I'm leaving this house tomorrow. I've already called a realtor, but I know it won't matter. Whatever I encountered in those woods has marked me somehow, claimed me. I suspect it's been watching me, watching this house long before I ever moved in. Perhaps it's why the previous owner left. The scratches on my back haven't healed. If anything, they've become more pronounced. The skin around them has taken on a strange texture, similar to the entity's surface, rippling subtly when I'm not looking directly at it. Sometimes I catch it moving in the mirror, patterns flowing beneath my skin like dark water. And sometimes when I catch my reflection in a mirror or window, I think I see something standing behind me, a tall, thin shadow with no features, just for a moment, just at the corner of my eye. When I turn, nothing's there, but the air feels disturbed, as if something just moved aside. I've started losing time, small gaps at first, minutes, maybe half an hour. Now, entire afternoons disappear. I'll be working at my computer at noon, and then suddenly it's sunset, and I'm standing at the edge of my yard, staring into the woods. My hands dirty, my shoes caked with mud from the forest floor. Once I found leaves in my hair, leaves from a species of trees that doesn't grow in this region. The worst part is I'm beginning to feel a strange anticipation during these episodes, a growing desire to return to the woods, to the clearing, to them. I'm fighting it, but it's getting harder. The call is becoming more insistent, more compelling. My dreams have changed. I see through other eyes, multiple perspectives simultaneously. I move through the trees without touching the ground. I watch sleeping forms through windows, through walls. I am both observer and observed, predator and prey. I am becoming something else, something that exists in the spaces between what I was and what they are. I'm sharing this now because I need others to know, to understand what's out there in the dark places of the world, things that watch us, things that have always been watching us, things that are beginning to take a more active interest in certain individuals. Why me? Why now? I don't know. Perhaps my years of seeking them out attracted their attention. Perhaps I was always meant to be a bridge between worlds. And if you're seeing something similar, if you've felt that unnatural silence fall over a familiar place, or glimpsed movement that doesn't follow the rules of human anatomy, know that you're not alone. They are watching you, too. They always have been. Most just never notice. Some perceive but dismiss. A rare few, like me, see clearly and are forever changed. Share your stories. Document everything. The more of us who speak up, the harder it becomes for these entities to remain hidden, though perhaps that's what they want. Perhaps this is all part of some greater emergence. I've created a secure server where I'm uploading all my research notes, including detailed descriptions of every unusual occurrence I've documented in these woods. You can access it through my website at darkwoodcryptids.com. My social media channels will remain active as long as I'm able to maintain them, or as long as they allow me to maintain them. I've noticed strange comments appearing and disappearing on my posts. Followers whose profiles vanish when I try to view them. Messages that change content between when they're sent and when I've read them. I don't know what's happening to me. The doctors are baffled by the marks, by the inexplicable changes in my blood work, cellular anomalies they've never encountered before, by the shadows that occasionally appear in my x-rays, shadows that move between exposures, always oriented toward the back of my skull, reaching inward. The specialists I've consulted speak in whispers when they think I can't hear. Terms like unknown pathogen and unprecedented neurological changes float down hospital corridors. One used the phrase non-human protein structures before noticing me listening and abruptly changed the subject. My latest brain scan shows activity in regions that should be dormant, patterns that the neurologist said resembled no known cognitive process. If you're out there, if you've encountered these watchers, these things that hide in the spaces between what we know and what we fear, reach out, post your experiences in the comments below. Join the growing community on the forum at darkwoodcryptids.com. Together we might understand, or at least we might not face them alone. Because the truth is, they've always been there, in the woods, in the dark, watching and waiting, and now, for reasons I can't comprehend, they've decided to make themselves known. To me, to us. I believe they're preparing for something beyond our understanding. The marks on my back burn as I type these final words. They form a pattern I've begun to decipher. Not a language as we know it, but something older. A map? Perhaps. Or a date. The symbols seem to correspond to celestial alignments that will occur in the coming months. A convergence of stars and planets that happens once every few centuries. What will happen when those alignments occur? What door will open? What will step through? I've uploaded everything I know to the server. If I disappear, the information will automatically release to key researchers and journalists I trust. The dead man's switch is set. If I don't check in every 24 hours, everything goes public. But I need your eyes now, your experiences, your witness. Have you seen them? The tall watchers in the woods? The shadows that move independently? The silhouettes at the edge of your vision? The faces in the bark of trees that vanish when you look directly at them? Have you woken at 3:17 a.m., inexplicably alert, with the certainty that something is in the room with you? Have you found items in your home, slightly out of place, arranged in patterns you don't remember creating? Have you felt the weight of observation, the pressure of attention from something just beyond perception? Tell me, tell us. Because I know now that what I saw in the woods wasn't a random encounter. It was an introduction. They're coming out of the shadows, and they know we've been watching. Stay vigilant. Stay connected, and whatever you do, don't go into the woods alone at night. They'll be waiting. But perhaps so am I. Part of me, the part that's changing, longs to return to that clearing, to become something more than human, to join the watchers in the trees. The scratches on my back are spreading, the patterns growing more complex, more beautiful. Sometimes I catch myself standing at the edge of the woods with no memory of how I got there. Sometimes I feel my body trying to move in ways it shouldn't, my joints bending in directions they weren't designed for. I don't know how much longer I'll remain myself. Already I perceive things differently, colors beyond the normal spectrum, sounds beyond human hearing range. I can feel the thoughts of small animals near my house, taste the fear of birds when they sense my presence. If you've seen them too, if you bear that mark, share your story in the comments. Let others know what's happening and what's coming. If you haven't, keep watching the woods, because they're watching you. Thanks for listening to another of my Dark Veil tales. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more, be sure to click on the linked story here or others in my videos. And if you're so inclined, please like or subscribe to my channel. It will definitely be appreciated. Have a frightfully fantastic day.